Hi, good afternoon. My name's Chris Rose from Nalanda Technology. Thank you for joining the session. We're going to take around 45 minutes perhaps to show you how our analytics SAR solution works. I'm going to show you two different uses for SARs. There are many, but one will be focused on an HR type SAR, so where an ex-employee perhaps has raised a subject access request, and the second will be in a care setting, whether that's social care, healthcare, where the service user or the person who has received the care from your business perhaps submits a subject access request. So just very briefly before I show you the live product, to give you a bit of background on who we are. The business is called Nalanda Technology. We are part of OLM Group. OLM Group has a range of software and support facilities spanning software to the local authority and national health and charities and care provider sector. We also have a publishing business which focuses largely on learning disabilities, mental health, and providing online knowledge and information and training skills. Finally, we have two aspects of the business that are relevant to the solution I'm going to show you today. That's High Tech, which is our cybersecurity and information governance team, and they make sure that everything we do is GDPR compliant. They are Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001 accredited, so they hopefully know what they're doing with the technology. And the last one on the list is Nalanda Technology, and we are the business who have designed the search and discovery platform. It's designed to be used in a number of different settings, but today we're going to focus on subject access requests. The group is large, significant, has been around, and in fact, this year is the 30th year of the business. And we have around 200 staff split across our offices in the UK. What I'm going to show you today is the analytics platform itself. Just very quickly, what is analytics? It is a search and discovery platform, and its design really is built around a combination of artificial intelligence and natural language programming. So a bunch of our experts within Nalanda Technology have designed a solution which will facilitate the use of AI search enhancements. So for example, in the real world, this means that we can find text in what is typically termed as unstructured data. So in other words, finding words, finding NHS numbers, passport IDs, credit card IDs, phone numbers, email addresses, etc., held within unstructured documents such as Word documents, PDFs. It could be in email messages or in attached documents to email messages. So basically, where it isn't held in a conventional computer database, the SARS solution will surface that information and enable you to use it. Just to give a quick sort of pictorial view, the typical landscape or estate for many of our clients' IT infrastructure is spread across everything from network drives on a local network, typically emails, Exchange server embedded within there, various document management systems, supplemented with things like cloud drives, so OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. And then finally, if there are any case management systems, whether they are HR or care provider or housing case management solutions. So what the solution does is it enables us to take data from all those various repositories and store it securely into our analytics search and discovery platform. And then we can analyze that information in this context for subject access requests. The same platform is used by other clients to be able to perform things like contract comparisons, document reviews, and for preserving old legacy data where an old system perhaps is no longer supported and you effectively want to decommission it, but you still need the data. All of those are supported with an analytics platform, but for today's demonstration, we're just going to focus on subject access requests. So the typical issues in subject access requests that we've seen with many of our clients is the fact that the first process is to be able to get all of the data. So this is where you've got to find information, perhaps embedded in emails. You've then got to load those files up to be able to search them. You've got to open all the attachments. At the end of that, you still then have to convert them to a PDF output so that you can use redaction tools such as Adobe to be able to blackline any of the text that you wish to hide for the final submission. Once you've got your source data, you then have to go through and open each one of those documents, read them, see if they've actually got data that's pertinent, or remove it from your list. In addition to that, you have to look for any third-party personally identifiable information, so anything from postcode to name, email address, etc., all of which could be scattered, particularly in things like spreadsheets over numerous worksheets in one Excel book. And then finally, when you've got what you think is the final set, you'll have to output that as an immutable image-only PDF. We did some tests on volumes of data, and they're shown in the bottom part of the screen, where it's an approximation of the type of time spent going through that process. We have examples of real-world case studies where we've worked with clients who have had in excess of 100,000 documents right at the source of a SAR and had to go through that exact painful process. With analytics, we significantly reduce the amount of time and effort required to do that. You still have to read the documents, but loading the SAR details in the first place can be loaded in their native format. So emails, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, various file types can just be loaded into the SAR solution. You don't have to convert them to PDF first. We have advanced automation within the search so that we can filter out any documents that don't pertain to this subject. So if the requester's information isn't held in the document, you don't have to go working through any PII because that document can just be put to one side. We then auto-identify and redact any PII, and it can then be finally tagged perhaps for peer review if you need input from your legal team, HR team, whoever, you can go through that final stage. And at the end of that, we automatically output an immutable or image-only PDF and bundle it into a zip file so it's ready to be sent to the subject requester. Those are some of the clients that use the product, and there's a real range of uses of the software that I'm about to show you. So we'll move on and I'll show you the process itself. So within our product, if I just jump to Google browser, I've got a shortcut to log into the analytics login page. So that login will effectively identify who I am, what rights, privileges I have for processing SARs, and hopefully on the screen now you should see what is termed as my SAR dashboard. So within this view of the system, I've got a nice clear screen which will show me the dashboard that I'm working with. Because I'm a manager, I can see not only my SARs, but I could have a view of all SARs being processed by my colleagues. And I can get analysis of the SARs and typical days taken to process and the volumes that we've received. On the left-hand side of the screen, I've got a navigation dashboard, so that will help me navigate through the software. I can fold that view away to create more space on the screen, but I think hopefully there should be enough space for you to see the process in the center of the screen. Focusing into the center of the screen, I've got details of all the SARs that are currently open. It's color coded, so if it's red, it's telling me that that particular SAR is now overdue, in this instance by 26 days, as I can see. So it's highlighting the fact we're behind the timescale that we should be. If it's in amber, then effectively it's near or it's reached its due date, so you should be completing that. If it's in black, then you're well within your 1 month deadline or your 60-day or 90-day if you've got an extension granted. Any of my closed SARs are listed at the bottom of the screen. So if I want to check on a closed SAR, so maybe the requester has telephoned or emailed back with a question, I can have a quick access to that work that I've already completed. Because I'm a manager, I can quickly oversee how many files are being dealt with and who in my team, which ones are overdue, which ones are about to become overdue, etc. And I can get that at a quick glance. Finally, I can get an overview of how the team's doing across the board. So any management stats that I need are shown on the screen, and I've got details of how many have been opened, how many have been closed. And if I drop down into the bottom part of the screen, greater analysis for all of those. We hold the current year and the previous year's data, but we hold all the information that can then be output by one click into an Excel spreadsheet. So if I go back to the dashboard, what I'll do is I'll start a brand new SAR so you can see the process from start to finish. And if I go off and create a SAR, you'll see in the center of the screen, I've got some outline details of the record of the file. So this is effectively case managing the receipt, what the SAR is all about, how did it come in, and I can then start the process. And the process is defined at the top of the screen with a workflow. So it's showing me I'm in stage 1, I'm defining the request, and I've got a number of steps to go through before I complete the SAR. In the first instance, put in a request name. This doesn't have to be anything specific other than a unique identifier so that you can refer to this particular one. So it could be that it's, I'll take an HR case in the first instance and put in a unique number. Who is it requested by? So who is the person that has requested this? It could be a lawyer, it could be the subject themselves. Just putting a brief note in there. What is the type of request we've got? So pick from the drop-down list. In this instance, I'll pretend we're dealing with an ex-employee's request, and put in the name of the subject. So if I put in details who this is, who is the person dealing with it? Because as I said, I'm a manager, it will default to me, but I could pick from my team who I should send this work to. And then finally, the request start date. I'll say this came in yesterday, so it should be completed within that 30-day turnaround. Finally, the request came in by email. If I want, I can keep a copy of the email text so I can see for ease of reference when it came in, what it was about, what they're asking for. So in this case, it is an HR issue, a dispute between Mr. Collins and his manager, and wants details of all records between the date range. So they've typically, in this example, followed the ICO's guideline template letter for making a subject access request. Don't always come in such clear and concise terms, but at least it gives me a reference point why we're processing this work. So where is the data? Well, I'll indicate that it's from within my organization. I've got the option to indicate outside because it could be a number of days before we receive that data to process it. Yes, I've got the data. Was an extension granted? In this case, no. And all I have to do then is click next. It'll take me through to step 2, which is creating the data set for this subject access request. So I've got a set of choices on the screen. I can use an existing data set if I've got one. Perhaps I've got access to the HR system and that's there available. In this instance, I'll show you how typically this would be constructed from a set of files that have either been sent to me, have been put on a network drive by the IT team, put into a Dropbox folder, or in this case, I'll say these are all files that I've got on my local computer. So at that point, I can either pick folders or individual files. I'll choose files, and at that stage, it's just opening up Internet Explorer, and I've got a folder here which is called HR Data Repository with a whole range of files. And as you can see, the file types range from PDFs to Word documents, to email messages, to Excel spreadsheets. I've got a whole range of them. So if I just pick the complete set of files from the screen, well, I've now got something like 81 files that I'm going to include in this SAR. The solution now points to where I'm going to collect all of those and create the data set. So it's going to upload all those 81 files. It'll analyze the types of files they are to give me a guide as to what's being contained. And then it will allow me to click on next to take us to the next stage with that complete set of files. All of that's now being indexed, so I've got access to all of that data. And what I can do, the next step, is take you through defining the search for that individual record that we're looking for. We'll come back with the data sources. As I say, I've got about even more. It's found more information within there. And a quick breakdown will show me there are a number of old Word document types, the latest docx formats, email messages, PDFs, a publisher file, a couple of Excel spreadsheets. So if I say next, at this stage, I'm on to step 3, defining the search, and it knows the name of the subject. If I want, I can put in alternatives for that name. Could be Mr. J. Collins. Ooh. So I can complete alternative spellings of that individual. At this stage, I can add a secondary party. If you recall, the email that we received for this example referred to somebody called Grant Smith. Once more, if I want to, I can put alternatives for that individual. And I can put as many as I wish. Next stage on the search is to close down even more. If I had 1,000, 2,000 documents, emails, etc., I might at this stage, because of the request letter, I might want to look for just specific terms. So anything that says HR, dispute, management issues, etc., then look for those documents. Finally, if I wanted to pick a date range, so it could be, as the subject had requested, that they want everything from 2015 up until today's date, then I'm cutting out some very old files that don't need to be included in the response. Stage 4 of the workflow is defining any exclusions. So whilst you would typically include everything and redact certain information, there will be certain circumstances where you have the right to refuse to supply information. Now that could be, as we've encountered with our health partners in the NHS, it could be detrimental to the individual's well-being to reveal certain information that was provided to experts, consultants, etc. More typically in an HR type issue, it could be anything where you've involved the police. So if there's anything where You would not want to reveal that you've had emails to or from the police or with a subject of fraud, embezzlement, etc. Then you can exclude them, and you can exclude as many as you wish. So just keep adding those onto the list. In this case, I'll try and keep it slightly broader, and I'll say, right, go off and select everything to search against. So it'll look for every variant of James Collins, Grant Smith, etc. And I can click next. We're at the final stage to complete the automated redaction. And at this stage, it's saying, if you wish, the SAR solution can automatically redact from a set of categories, dictionaries, whatever you wish to term it, anything where it finds either a country name, an email address, perhaps legal terms. I want it to redact or automatically highlight any third-party names. It could also be that I want to exclude NHS, national insurance numbers, postcodes, phone numbers, etc. If there are any other phrases, words, etc., that you know you want to automatically find in any of these documents, you simply add them into the screen. Otherwise, I can tell it to run, and what the system will now do is it'll go away through the 80-odd files that we loaded onto the solution, looking for any reference to James Collins, Grant Smith, any personally identifiable information, and it's come back at this stage saying, here is a list of all of the documents that I need to give greater attention to. It's now showing me that it's found a total of 31 sentences in 23 documents. So you can see we've got rid of over half the documents because I don't have to look at them now. There's nothing in there that's relevant to the subject. It's showing me a list of them at the top of the screen, identifying what type, Word document, PDF, email message, etc. And just as a little highlighter, it's telling me that it's found 4 sentences or 3 sentences. So it's finding the most relevant and listing them in order. So if I wished, I could click on the expand and it will just give me a preview of where it's found the certain information that we're looking for. Having done that, in most of our instances where the product's being used, people will simply work their way through each one of the files, looking at the record in detail. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a very clear indication of what the system has found and what it's about to redact automatically. So the view here is it's found the individuals, it's going to redact the information, it's highlighting all of the data. If I want something to be fully redacted that hasn't been automatically found, I can simply highlight it at that stage and tell it to redact it in the entire data set or just in this document. If I say the entire data set, it'll go out through everything within that particular record. At that stage, if I want to, I can tag that as reviewed and mark that. So at this point, I've got a little green tag record showing at the top of the screen, and it's also showing in the list saying that one's been reviewed, I'm okay with the content, and we can move on to the next one. At this point, it will show me any other identifier. There could be information, for example, I've put in this one that I wanted to highlight Mr. James Collins. I want to unredact that in the entire data set. So at any point, you can redact not only in the one document, but it'll go back to a previous document that you've already reviewed and unredact it if you think that's what you need to achieve. Once you've marked the record, again, I can say either I can tick the box as reviewed or automatically it'll tick it if I put in a note to reference it. So that's marked that one as okay. I can work through each one of these files, identifying the details, redacting information as I see fit, marking through every example on the screen. If there are words that perhaps I'm not sure what they mean or what the reference is, I'll either look them up in the dictionary or look them up in Wikipedia. So some useful tools that sit alongside the document as I want to work through that particular file type. Any one of these can be pulled up on the screen. I can look at the detail, but once I've gone through all of them, I mark them all as reviewed, and it could be on one particular one. There's some information here that it's private and confidential, so I want to tag that, and I say, well, that could be, is this, okay. That'll flag it, and I've now got a red flag, and at any point I can work through my list. There could be hundreds of documents here, and at the end of that I can filter out all of those where I've got to go and speak to somebody in legal to check that all is okay. If not, just look at all the results. I can now pretend in this instance that I've been through every one of the documents, I've marked them as okay, and I can now go on to the next stage, which is producing the output for this particular record. Click on the individual one, tell it I would wish to zip all of those documents together, and tick the box. What it'll do now is it'll pull all of those records together and give me an option, because there are some files which may have been OCR'd, may have been picked up with images, and it'll identify those and give me the chance in what we call the final review to make any manual adjustments to the redaction that I see on the screen. So what it'll do is it will produce a final version of that file. And you can see on screen a list of all of the documents in their ready to go status. I can zoom in, zoom out, and I can work my way down the list just to give it a final review. Everything that I've done through the earlier phases have automatically been redacted, but there could be some other pieces of information in here that perhaps I want to get further images. So for example, this document I can see has got some signatures on it. So if I want, I can add a shape, pick from the list, choose the color that I wish to use, and at this point, redact it directly on the screen. Just to give you an idea of some of the tools and their use. Again, you can adjust that, move it accordingly. And at that instance, save the file and move on to the next document. So every one of those can be worked through until you're happy that that's the final set done. And at the end of that exercise, choose to zip that as a complete output. So I've reduced the workload. I've automated some of the process for automatically finding personally identifiable information. Once I've found it in one document, I don't have to worry about going through every other document to repeat that. And at the end of the exercise, it's produced a unique zip file for every one of those records. You'll see it's also automatically redacted the name that was held in that instance in a Word document. So any third-party name that was used in the document, it's been redacted from the file name as well. And any one of those documents can be viewed on the screen by the recipient, and there's nothing that they can do with the redaction tools. Even if they've got Adobe Professional, they can't peek beneath the redacted blocks. So at the end of that phase, I've now got the ability to close that file. So the HR case, I can indicate, miraculously went out the day after it came in. Identify the reference. And you'll see now in my dashboard, it's gone from my open SARs and it's now down as one of my closed SAR records. I can still at any point get information about that particular record, giving me a summary of exactly what was done, what was searched for, any exclusions applied, what redacted categories did we automate, anything that was manually redacted, and then finally a copy of the text that we received in the email message to make that request in the first place. So that's a very quick tour of how the SAR tool works in an HR type dispute. Again, just to give a quick recap at this time, perhaps for those of you that are looking in on this session, see it in the context of a care setting. So if I put it in as care ref. In this instance, this will just be identified as an ex-service user and the name of the individual, perhaps a child who is placed in care or in a care home setting, received care, and once more identify the details of when I need to complete this, putting in references as to was it received. I can paste the email in. Once more, go to create a new data set and choose the files. In this instance, I'm going to pick up the Barry Trotter case file. You'll see it's got a folder full of documents. It could be a zip file that somebody sent me. So I don't have to worry about undoing them or turning them into any other kind of document type. And if I simply drop those in and create the data set, and at that instance, it loads in this selection. There's only 37 documents, email messages, Excel spreadsheets for it to load and analyze. It's also, in this instance, got automatic optical character recognition, or OCR. So there are a couple of documents in the data set that I've loaded that have got some handwritten responses, maybe old files, maybe pulled out of the archive, and they've been scanned to drop into this record. So I click on next. Once more, you've seen all the details that we can add into a search. In this instance, I'll just put a few variants of the individual name. And at that point, I can click on next. If I want to include or exclude emails, by default, we'll include everything and tell it to go and search. So in this instance, I'm not choosing, like the HR example, to have multiple parties. This is just for one individual. And I'll say, certainly remove any email addresses, names. I could choose to redact automatically any terms that are defined as relatives, so son, father, mother, etc. But pick up the rest of the usual standard identifiers and click and run. Software will go away, the little circle is spinning whilst it conducts the index of all of that information. I'm presented with the data, and once more you'll see it's automatically highlighting anything that it will redact without me having to do any more. So if that's okay, I can mark that. The same works for each one of these files. So if there is anything that I want to pick up, I can identify in the individual record. Here is a scan document that's come in. It's notified it because it's stamped on the file type OCR, so I can easily identify on the list those that have been scanned in. So there could be some handwritten text, there could be some images. There could be, in this case, because it's a mixed care and health record, all sorts of data, some of which I might not understand. So I can look in the dictionary, or in this instance, Wikipedia, to give me a quick insight. If that's all okay, yes, mark it as reviewed, and so on. So the principle is the same, that I can identify every one of these documents. And at that stage, I can say, yes, that's all ready to go. So I want to produce the output for that particular file. it'll pull together all of the data and produce that set of PDFs for a final pass to make sure if there are any of those OCR documents where perhaps the text or the images that are incorporated need to be redacted using the manual tool. So I can pull those up onto the screen. Once more, I get a copy of the document, redacted. I get all of the information shown onto the screen. If there's anything particular in there, like the previous one, it may well be that I need to redact on each one of those screens. Move on to the next one. And once more, when I go through the file types, there will be certain areas where the information that's shown on the screen might not be permissible in its final phase. So if I go down to this particular record, I know that on one of the pages, I've got details of the individual's record straight out of their case management system. And it could be that there are certain pieces of data that I shouldn't be revealing. In that case, there were some scanned images, there were some document types. And if I pull up this particular one, and this one's got an OCR set of images, and once more, I've got the ability to add a shape and redact a signature out of there, and that's done. So every one of those files has now been processed. I've looked at the final output. I can see the information. I've got one here that I've held back from revealing. If I go onto the manual incident form, this is one where the predefined form was manually completed, and you'll see it automatically redacted the name. Even though it was handwritten, it's redacting all of the other information that is personally identifiable, but it's left Barry Trotter in there. So the OCR transcribed the words, indexed it, and that's why it's pulled it out of the what was the paper record. So in that instance, I can mark it as complete, zip that particular folder up. Once more, I've completed the exercise to get all of those documents in immutable PDF format, and that's then ready for me to go off and close it. And I can go through that phase again. So just to show that everything has been managed within the SAR solution, it's been wrapped up in the process and output as a final version. So